All right, here we are. Number 85, everybody. Right? Number 85. And it's all you guys, right? Because if it weren't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing any of this. So, congratulations, right? We're almost to 115 weeks. So what's that? Like, yeah. Anybody got any questions to start off with? I think I'll play a little bit while we're waiting for questions to come in. So, what I was doing right now is a mixture of two, and you guys have heard me say this before, I don't think of them as scales, I think of them as keys. And so the stuff I do, the way I'm thinking, I'm not thinking, hey, play this scale. I'm thinking I'm in this key. But some keys blend into each other, right? So I'm using language from within that key, and then language from within this key, right? And so I'll give you an example. So this is G blues, right? Right, so like right there, that's not the blues scale, right? Someone got an argument with me about that. That's not the blues scale. And I just played two blues motifs next to each other. The nice thing about thinking motivically about this stuff is that you're free. You're not stuck on the scale. You can do stuff, right? Like what I'm about to show you, right? So there's blues. You know, that sounds really bluesy. That's because I'm using motivic content from the blues language. Then I have this other language that I go to. Okay, that wasn't it. So, okay, so that's, anyway. Hello, Javier. I hope you're doing good. Hello, Raimo. Nice to see you. Anyway, so that's how I do this stuff. The more I taught, I started teaching motivic improvisation in the early 90s. And the more I teach motivic improvisation, the more I can't really see another way to do it. I've been through all those other ways, and they're just basically just mechanics. When you do the motivic stuff, it actually becomes a language, and you can actually speak that language. And that's when you have the most freedom, right? Because that language, the way the pieces of that language go together, it's like limitless. There's so much you could do with it. Hello, James. So all of that, that I just did, not a single bit of it was anything but motivic content. I wasn't playing not a single scale in my improv that I just did right now. Not one scale. Now you might be able to extrapolate a scale, and I think that's what's happened in history. I think what's happened is the academics, they they look at the greats, right? They look at the greats and they say, oh, this guy played that note, that note, that note, that note, and they extracted a scale from that. I think that's where the blues scale came from. Hello, Lily. Um, so I hope that makes sense. If you Now, I do think it gets a little bit more complicated because today we have some highly successful people who were educated with the scale stuff, who now that's how they play, and I'm not going to say that they sound bad. The stuff that they play sounds extremely interesting. Javier says some greats are not even good at reading music. That's true. So, yeah, to me, it's once you get out of the language thing, let me separate. So we have the people that do the language. And by the way, there's some marvelous, marvelous trumpet players my age and younger who have embraced the language, who sound awesome playing the language. Um, so I'm not saying that it's only the old cats, right? Um, so like Terrell Stanford, maybe Terrell Stanford's my same age, I think, maybe. Um, but that's somebody who's doing a lot of language, a lot of language. Awesome, awesome playing. And but then you have guys that are just playing scales. And once again, I'm not saying that they're bad players or anything. It's not a criticism, okay? But I think what happens, so I'm speaking only philosophically, right? I'm not judging anybody. I think what happens philosophically is you have a split down the middle, where's the middle? Split down the middle, and on this side you got the people with more language, on this side you got people with more uh, scales and arpeggios and patterns and all that stuff. And I think what happens is, on the language side, it becomes something more about, the focus is more on communication. On the scale, arpeggio, pattern side, what you're left with, because there's less of a means to communicate. Scales don't communicate the way language does. Okay, so on the technique side, what you're forced to hear, oh, I just gave it away. On this side over here with the scales and all that stuff, what you're forced to do is show everybody how good you are. And if you, so does that make sense? If you're striving to play jazz from with scales and arpeggios and all that stuff. Now, don't get me wrong. I practice my scales probably more than they do. I practice arpeggios probably more than they do. I stopped doing a lot of those advanced pattern things because I don't think they're relevant. I still do some of them, but I don't think they're as relevant now that I'm into this language stuff. Um, but, on that side, because the music doesn't communicate as well, they are forced to play in a way that it really, the whole thing centers on how good they are. And the whole experience of hearing them perform is an experience of saying, wow, that guy is so awesome, right? But in terms of the music that comes out, it doesn't grab your soul, it doesn't touch your heart. Okay, and it's not a criticism of them as musicians. They are awesome. But because it's not motivic content. See, so I believe something happens with the motivic content. you get a direct connection to the language centers in the brain. And the people who hear your music, when you're playing motivically, the people who hear your music are hearing you speak to them. Whereas on the other side, it's more like trying to show off and show them. And I'm not saying that these people are show-offs. I'm just saying that the people who play that way are stuck in that world where they have to be show-offs. Otherwise, there's no value in their musicianship. And what reason do the people have to come back again and listen again? Okay, does that make sense? Without the motivic content, they're stuck. They have to be show-offs, is what I'm saying. There's no other way to do it. There's no other reason to be standing on stage other than for them to say, hey, look how good I am. Because the music that they play does not speak the way that the other stuff speaks. Anyway, Javier says, like metal guitarist. Yeah, I guess, I don't know. You know, I think there's language in that too, by the way. When I was young, I never had any of those albums myself, but I used to hang out with people that listened to that stuff a lot. And I think there is a language there too. But you're right, it's the same with all music. It's the same with all music. There can be players who use motivic and players that don't use motivic in any genre. James says, from the triad and chord practice grid that you sent, I am not familiar with the sus7 chord. I think sus4 would be, okay, it's the same. It's the same. So there's two ways to write that chord. Let's open up my handy dandy. Remember, you know, the guys that claim that there is a standard for a lot of this stuff are just full of it. Right? I've had this argument many times over with different oh, that's the wrong one. Let me get to this one. Sketchbook. There we go. And let me empty that out. So you have the right notes. The sus chord is C, F, G. Oh, I'm having a rough time. And B flat. Okay. And you're right. You can write this as a C7 and then in parentheses sus4. Maybe that's the best way to write it. That's not how I write it. Another way to write it is C, sus7. I know, you know what, now that you're pointing that out, this is probably a better way to write it. Maybe people don't write it that way because it takes up so much room. Right? Because now you've got 3 more characters in that chord. And so, yes, it's a little bit more clumsy in terms of that. I hope that makes sense. So, yes, it's the same chord. And it's B flat, not B natural, but I'm sure you knew that. So, yes, just to answer your question directly, you said, am I at least right on the sus4? That's correct. It's a sus4 chord. I think the 4 is assumed in that case. Because there is such a thing as a sus2 chord, but we don't really use that in jazz because in jazz the 2 is the 9, right? And so I shouldn't say we don't. When I say we don't, I say me and my buddies, we don't use that. because that's the 9. And you can often have a sus7 with a 9, or a sus9, I guess you would say. It's not really a sus7 with 9. Remember that the 9 implies that there's a 7, right? So, and by the way, just a little tidbit of trivia, the sus9 chord is all the same notes as the pentatonic scale, right? So in this case, it would be, so for C, it would be B flat pentatonic. So the sus9, so the C is the root, the D is the 9, the F, the G, then the B flat. Those are all 5 notes of the B flat pentatonic. I don't believe in using that except for in emergencies. So, don't think like that, everybody. Please don't think like that. Okay. Javier says, he's got friends that play metal guitar. They overcharge their practice with scales and licks. That's what I'm talking about. You're right. If you're talking about that kind of metal and not the famous cats, yes, it's exactly the same as that. James says, okay, thanks. I just want to make sure before writing out all triads and arpeggios in each key. Well, good. Samuel says, what advice would you give to a trumpet player? By the way, hello, Samuel. Welcome to the live Q and A. Hello, Gabriel. What advice would you give to a trumpet player for playing by ear? Okay, so playing by ear. Now, Samuel, let me know, are you talking about, so is this someone who can play by, who does not know how to read music? Or is this someone who can read music but wants to learn how to play by ear? Because those are two different things, right? Those are two different things. And it's different advice. If it's for someone who does not know how to read music and they're playing by ear, then it's an entirely different set of advice for someone that I would teach that does read music. I hope that makes sense. So let me know which one you're talking about. So Javier has a question. Does he reads with his ear? Hey, that's a good answer. Did I tell you guys the story about when I had a salsa rehearsal that got canceled? All the way on the other side of Houston, over an hour driving. Got to the salsa rehearsal, got canceled, but the guy said, and the name of this band was Volcan, and Howdee was the guy's name, and Howdee is, I think, from Colombia. Grupo Volcan. Yeah, can't read music. So I'll get back to you, Samuel. Anyway, I was telling my story. I had this salsa rehearsal, and they canceled the rehearsal, but didn't get, this was before cell phones, right? So they didn't get to me in time. And I got out there and they said, well, you might as well take the music. And while Howdee was giving me the music, the club owner showed up, and I opened up the music and I started singing the opening line for one of the tunes, and the owner stepped back. He said, you know this song? He says. I said, no, I've never seen it before in my life. I don't know this song at all. He says, and how do you know what it sounds like? I said, because it's written right here, right? Both of those guys, they were surprised that you can like look at the music and know how it goes. So yes, I used to do a lot of salsa gigs one of them, one of the bands I worked with Volcan. I did also a uh, uh, Cuban band. What was it called? Criolla. It was called Criolla. What else? Saoko was another one. And a lot of the gigs I played were just pickup gigs. They weren't official bands. Um, and then if you look at the famous people that I've played with in the salsa world, that's like the most famous people. If out of any other genre, I've played with more famous salsa players, salsa singers, salseros, than any other category. My favorite, I have two favorites. Cano Estremera, I played with him about 4 or 5 times, and he's for what he does, he's my favorite. I think he recently passed away. Is that correct? I think maybe he passed away. Yeah, he passed away last year. Cano Estremera. I'm pronouncing it wrong. Estremera. And then the other group that I played with that was my other favorite, but it's a so Kano played more of a traditional style, and this other group was more what we call salsa romantica, right? And that group was Conjunto Chane. Man, oh man, oh man. 4 trumpets, no trombone, no sax, none of that nonsense, right? Um, uh, so anyway, that I also played with them. So I played with Kano 3 or 4 times. I played with Conjunto Chane, I think 3 times. And so a lot of players like that. That's what I for all through the '90s. That's what I was doing, and then into the new millennium, I did a lot of that kind of playing. Anyway, so to answer your question somewhat, I think the most important thing is, okay, number one most important thing is to listen to a lot of music. And I know that sounds like it has less to do with it, but it's actually extremely relevant, okay? Listen to lots of music, spend a lot of time listening. And then, when you are playing, so obviously when you're learning by ear, you have to have music anyway to hear it and then try to play it. I wouldn't try to do just trying to figure out. It's too hard to, as a beginner. It's too hard to just come up with stuff off the top of your head, right? Does that make sense? It's too hard to. That's like somebody painting a picture of somebody's face without that face in front of them, without a model, right? You need to have a model. You need to have something to listen to, and then you try it. That's how this works. And it doesn't, I'll tell you what you could do. I have a series of videos. Now, I put this series out for a different reason, but it would be very good for what you're talking about. Okay? You don't need to, it has the notes on the video, but you don't need the notes. You can just listen and imitate. Okay? Let me pull this up real quick. And I'll put the link for this series in the. So these videos come with a book that I wrote. It's you know what, it's one of the best books I ever wrote, but it's not. I think we probably only sold half a dozen copies of it so far. And I'm not ashamed of that or anything, because I know that it's a very strange book. You know, it's very difficult to get people to trust something that's brand new. And this is brand new. This is, I call it, what do I call it? Ha! I have to figure out what it is to do the search. Trumpet, folk, fill in the blank. Oh, why is that not working? Because I misspelled. Okay, so oh, that's not going to help me. Okay, I'll get this real quick. Sorry for the downtime. I'm looking. It's one of my older. I wish they made it to where you could. Oh, maybe I can do it that way. Let's do it that way. Nothing. Why is that? Okay, instead we're going to do it this way. I have a page in my website. That's actually even a better way to do it anyway, because I have them on the website. They are in order. So, I just have to find it. Because it's a hidden page. This is a hidden page on my website. It's not listed anywhere. Okay. There it is. Okay, so I'm going to put this. Alright, so now that link that I just put up, what you want to do is put one of those videos on, preferably starting with the first one, and I call it fishing for notes, right? Keep trying stuff until you find that note. Then once you know what that note is, you play that note over and over again 10 times. 10 times. 10 times. Okay? Play that note 10 times, then go to the second note. See if you can find that second note. When you find the second note, play that note 10 times. And that's, there's a lot of good things about playing by ear. Playing by ear is an awesome thing. You end up with a what do you call it? A understanding of music that is deeper at first, right? I mean, I think over time you can still develop that depth. But when you're playing by ear and you don't read music at all, you actually have a deeper understanding of the music than what people have when they're actually learning with notes. It really is. So I hope that makes sense. So that's what I would do. Go to that that page on my website and try imitating those songs, because those songs are all I'm going to list the songs for you real quick. We've got Lightly Row, Easy, 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 right? Hambone, Barlin Cabbage, Polly Wolly Doodle, New River Train, Twinkle Twinkle. These are all songs and they're all changed so that they're easy for the trumpet. Okay? And you just keep doing that and just keep fishing. Now, one other piece of advice I would actually give you too is, once you have a song, this is very important, okay? Once you have a song, rotate through all the songs that you know every day. Do that for a while. If you have a song that you know, play that, and then play the song you learned yesterday, and play the song. You almost have to be organized with this, you know. Keep a piece of paper with all the songs that you have, and keep repeating like that over and over again. It's repetition is key. Repetition is more important for the people playing by ear than it is for the people playing, uh, playing by reading. You have to keep repeating everything that you do over and over and over again so that it becomes automatic, becomes second nature. Hello, Anthony. Nice to see you. Anthony says, did you start late today? Just noticed you. No, it was on time. 1 o'clock. James says, only thing unable to play in Chop's Apprentice is the last 2 interval exercises. My chops failed at this point with the 2 octave jumps. Everything else good though. Should I move on to Chops Pro or wait? I would say, I'll tell you what I'll do for you, because it's hard to answer that without knowing what you mean by fail. If you can, next time you do this routine, make a video of yourself playing those last 2 interval exercises. If you can't do video, go ahead and do just audio and send it to me, and I'll tell you because that's a real good way to tell if you're ready to move on. Okay, so that's the best answer I could give you right now, is send me a recording and I'll give you a quick answer, yes or no. Okay, Anthony says, I am playing in a large community orchestra and I get lost when we read the music, especially when we are counting long rests. Yeah, you know what? That's something that you got to get used to. I know my answer to everything always sounds like it's listening, but if you do a lot of listening on those songs, right, the songs that you do for the orchestra, the more you listen to that music, the less likely you are to miss your entrance. Does that make sense? Gabriel says, I was going to ask about intervals too. So the thing about the intervals is that it's not what it seems like. I remember a long time ago, when in the 80s, I heard a trumpet player say that playing large intervals like that should not be any more difficult than playing on the piano. Boom, beep, boom, beep. It really shouldn't be. And I went into the practice room, and I'm like, how is that even possible? But it's the way we're taught is wrong. We got people telling us stuff, right? We have people telling us stuff that actually puts our brain in the wrong perspective. And we have a tendency to believe that the higher notes require more effort, and it's just not true. So when we go from that low note to the high note, the only issue there should be accuracy, not power, right? It's not about having enough strength to get that high note, right? It's about having the accuracy, going specifically to that position. Because remember, as you go higher, that position that the lips change to becomes increasingly more subtle. So we have a tendency when we go for the high notes, this is why people turn, well, I turn red too, but I mean turn really, really beet red, is because they think that getting to those higher notes means having a more strong embouchure. And when they do that, they over-tighten, they overshoot the note physically for the need that it requires, and then it forces them then to balance that with over abundance of air. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So what you're shooting for on those big intervals is accuracy, not strength. We don't care about the strength. The strength actually is a non-issue, really. And I know it sounds, I remember in the 80s when people told me that the trumpet was mostly mental, I didn't want to believe them. And now I find myself saying that it's mostly mental for almost everything. And the reason why it's mental, okay? You got to understand this. There's a mechanism for why it's mental. Things like playing higher, getting a better sound, playing musically. These are things that are beyond our control, consciously speaking. The subtlety that's involved there is so extremely minute that we cannot do those movements or those actions with our conscious mind. It's not possible. A word I've been using lately is that you cannot deliberate that action. Okay? I don't even know if that's grammatically correct. It just sounds good. But yes, it's all mental. And because it is mental, because the physical greatness that we're shooting for comes from the mental side of what we do, that means that it's the physical stuff that we're doing is extremely, what do you call it, fragile in a mental setting, right? Extremely fragile. In other words, what you believe you can't do can destroy whatever gains that you might have made. I hope that makes sense. So, what's that got to do with this? If we believe that the higher notes take more effort, that's what I mean by believe. If the way our brain is wired now, because of the way we were taught, or maybe it wasn't just taught, maybe we as men, we think that everything has to be muscled up on. I don't know. But whatever causes this, we have a tendency to think that the higher notes need more strength. And it's true, it needs a little bit of strength, but that's usually not the problem. And because we do believe that, that breaks the whole system down. That's why we miss those notes. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Javier says, James, the same here. The overtone slurs are my nemesis. I guess I keep trying till I get the whole level right. So here's the thing, Javier. Those slurs always sound bad. I still have days when those don't sound good. It's not about sounding good. We do strive to sound good. We always strive to sound good. It's not okay to sound bad. It's not okay to splatter the notes all over. Okay? But it happens. So the purpose of the lip slurs really is to focus on the air. It really is a distraction. Those lip slurs are meant to be a distraction, trying to make you do a worse airstream, and you're not going to let that happen. That's what those are. Okay, yes, they connect the top range and the bottom range, but so do all the other exercises now. Right? Originally, that's all it was to connect the exercises. Connect the range. Samuel says, thanks for the advice. You're welcome. What skill would you give to a beginner to learn after they have learnt? Oh, the C scale. Well, that's different for the people who are playing by ear, right? I would expand up and down from C, so start the D scale next, maybe B flat after that, and expand outward from there. D, now this is a whole different order than what I teach for people who read, okay? But we're taking into account that you're not reading the music, right? So D scale, B flat, E flat maybe, and then maybe A, you know, depending on, yeah, you could do those. And then F and G, those are the next scales I would work on in that order. Javier says, writing back to Samuel, says that I have a video, best order for 12 minutes. Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily do that order if you're not reading music. Because it really doesn't, it's not the same. Okay? It's really not the same. Now, James says, oh, and Gabriel says thanks. Samuel says thanks. You guys are welcome. Thank you. James says, now that my range has increased a little, I am getting a few cracked notes here and there. Need to work on accuracy a little bit more. So to me, cracked notes are, I'm always conscientious of what kind of cracked notes are they. I want to know whether they cracked up or whether they cracked down, because that tells me about intonation, that tells me about my chops, so I'm always aware when someone cracks a note, that's a good indicator for other stuff. I hope that makes sense. All right, so what else do you guys got? So, you know, accuracy is just a matter of familiarity. People are working on accuracy, and from where I'm at now, I don't even understand how someone could, you know, and I'm not criticizing you, James, at all. I'm just sharing with you what my thoughts are about this. I recently drew an analogy. You know, I went to the gun range for the first time since I was a kid, and my first time ever shooting a pistol. I've shot rifles my whole life, but whoop, what happened? I just lost something. Whoa, look at that. My drawing program just crashed. So when you go to the range, right, you've got your target, and I'm not very good at drawing here. And it's because it was my first time ever shooting a handgun, I had, you know, now here's the thing. The guy I was with said I was better than an average beginner, and I went into this treating it like playing my trumpet. How funny is that, right? But still, even with that, I didn't have the kind of control I needed. So, like, my first shot might have been here, and then here, and then here, here. Now, this is a great analogy, right? Because if we're talking about accuracy, the problem here is not that I'm not getting close enough to the target. The problem here is that my pattern is too wide. And I think the same exact thing happens when we're doing accuracy, right? So there's a certain lip tension that note requires, right? Let's say this is the range of lip tension on a scale, right? There's the scale of lip tension, and that's the range that that note requires. It can't be higher than that, it can't be lower than that. But we hit that note like this. We're the now of course, you know what, I need to back up. We all say that the best way to fix accuracy is with your ears. And that's still true. But I don't think the ears fix it 100%. I think you can have problems where just the range of what's okay for you for that note is just too wide. It's too broad. So sometimes you hit here, sometimes you hit here, and then sometimes you hit here. And so this is a familiarity issue. The more, you know, I have not been back to the range because this was during COVID, and I decided, oh, I'm starting to lose my voice. Oh man, I might have to quit. So anyway, that kind of threw me off there for a second. So what we're talking about is familiarity. I'm sure that the more I go and shoot that handgun, the closer my spread is going to be into the center, right? And it's the same thing. The more familiarity we have with this, I'm actually literally losing my voice right here and now. The more we can tighten that up into this tighter range. And yes, playing by ear, I mean using your ear to hear the note is a big part of that, right? I'm not saying anything against the traditional methodology that says you just have to hear it better. I'm not going against that. Okay? I'm just saying that, let me get back to the subject, right? Because, and this is connected to what we were saying earlier. If you think that it takes more effort to get that, you're gonna have this broader range. Okay? Anyway, I think I covered that. Practice. Oh, Javier says, I practice a salsa piece on hard days and jazz or classical on the other days. Is that okay? Or should I do 3 styles in one day? Yes, if that's okay. Actually, absolutely okay. Javier says, I'm really pushing it to the max on salsa volume-wise. Yeah, well, that's great because that's what it is, right? It is. That's the whole thing. I don't even think you can get a salsa sound without playing too loud. Right? That's just the nature of the beast. You actually have to put a lot of air and open the chops up to get that proper style. What else, guys? I hope I don't lose my voice completely. I am a little dry. What you got? Let me hear your other questions before we sign off here. Oh, Raimo says, good comparison with the pistol. Yeah. I think in the past I used bow and arrow because I've done archery stuff before, but I actually think the pistol thing is a better for trumpet. right? I think for trumpet, the pistol is a little bit better um, because of that power, right? When you're when you're playing the trumpet, you have to harness a very similar amount of power and make that turn that power into something with finesse and beauty. And so yeah, I think it's a much better. James says I usually crack up. Like, I see why that sounds funny, but I can tell it is because my chops are getting stronger. That's right. For now, and I am not worried. It will work out in time as I get used to the new strength and ease of hitting notes. Yeah, man. I'm excited for your progress. That sounds great. And yes, when the notes crack up like that, it's a very big sign. And if you're having that happen often, and then it's, especially with the high C thing, the high C is just right there. So, Raimo says with pistol, one important practice is holding. Yeah, you know what? I watched like, I don't know, 24 videos. So, the guy that took me, he's one of my adult students. In fact, he gave me the pistol that, I won't tell the whole story, but he ended up giving me the pistol and he wanted to take me to the range. But he recommended that I buy some of those fake bullets that you can practice with. And so before I went in there, I had a lot of practice just dry firing with those bullets that have the little rubber center. But yeah, did a lot with the holding of it. And it's the same thing with the horn too, really. There are ways to hold the horn that will make you just like with the gun, right? Now, see, I was fortunate that I had, when I was a child, the guy that taught me how to shoot a rifle was like uh, an Olympic medalist in what do they call it? Sharpshooting or whatever they call it. And so the mechanics of shooting, I already had down, right? From when I was a little kid. Um, it's rare for anyone, for me really. Um, and I don't, this is not a gun thread, um, but yeah, the mechanics of shooting well is something that I was taught long time ago. Oh, but I was relating that to trumpet. If you don't pull the trigger right, it it throws the bullet anywhere, right? You have to pull the trigger right, or the angle of the horn of the gun will go off. And it's the same thing with the way you hold the horn. If you don't hold the horn right, the angle of the horn goes off, and it can also make you not play so well. Okay? Anyway, let's take one more question so I don't lose my voice completely. I can feel it still kind of almost lost it here. Any other questions? Let's do one more. Javier says airsoft pistol for trumpet. Compressed air. So Raimo, do you do any hunting up there um in your summer home? It looks like a nice place to do that sort of thing. Hunting and fishing, I think. I looked at you told me what town you were in, and I looked on Google Earth. It's gorgeous up there. So, Gabriel says, is it really needed to compress air? I just released, not pushing so much. You know, that really, Gabriel, it really depends on what kind of playing you're doing. So like Javier talking about playing salsa, I don't think you can get a salsa sound without really pushing the air through like that. It's really got to be a lot of air against a lot of resistance, or it just doesn't sound right. But for, you know, for classical music, for example, I don't think you get a lot of that. So Javier says, would you mind if I send you a video playing so you could criticize my playing? Only if you can take it. I'm just kidding. No, that's one of the things I do for people. Okay? So, yes, if you want to send a video, any of you guys, anyone wants to send a video of you playing just to get some comments, I don't mind doing that. I can't promise that I will do that forever, so if you want to ever do that, now's the time. Who knows what the future holds. I don't know how much time I'll have in the future to do stuff like that, but that's one of the things I do, you know. I like helping people on the horn, right? And there's hardly a better way to help people than to hear them play and say, hey, you could do this better, you know. Raimo says, with holding, I mean sighting to target and trying to hold pistol steady on target. Yes, yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Like, yes, I know exactly what you mean. And it's exactly like holding a trumpet. It really is. The two actions are the same. I guess for this is Javier. I guess for styles that demand the horn to scream, more compression is necessary. I'm just guessing no. So, me personally, I don't think of it as compression. I really use my ears and all the mechanical stuff just kicks in. You know, I don't know. I can't even remember. My first salsa gig was, believe it or not, in Chicago. Even though I'm from El Paso, I never played any salsa in El Paso. Right? My first salsa gig was in Chicago. They made fun of me because I couldn't tell where one was in the measure. I was like, because you know the bass often hits the beat 4, and I'm used to bass hitting 1. And man, oh man, oh man, I had a rough time on that gig. But then so what happened for me is I came to Houston after Chicago, and my first steady gig was with a cumbia band, and we played a lot, and so that's like a stepping stone. And we did not play any other cumbias except for, we did not play Tejano, we did not play Norteño, we only played Mexican cumbias. Okay? So, and then from that band, I started getting calls to play with a Colombian cumbia band. So that was a different band, right? So here I'm playing with this band, Mexican cumbias, and then this band over here, the leader of that band was a sub to play with the Mexican band, and he heard me play, and now he wants me to play sometimes, not all the time. Dario was his name. Dario, I can't remember his last name. Anyway, Dario had me play with his band, which was cumbias from like Pastor Lopez and guys like that, right? I just heard a Pastor Lopez song the other day. Um, oh, what's the name of that song? Anyway, I forget the name of the song. His songs are always funny. Um, so then that got me hooked up with the salsa guys because the guys that were in that Colombian cumbia band were also playing salsa. So that's how I ended up doing that stuff. Raimo says, I practice trumpet same way, holding long tones. Yes, I hunt, but mostly I shoot targets, also competitions. Wow. Wow, I'm impressed. So the only reason I haven't done more is because of the money. So, I don't know if I've ever told you guys this before, but up until about 15 years ago, most of my adult life I have lived not just beneath the poverty line, but well beneath the poverty line. If I wanted food stamps all those years, I could have had food stamps. If I wanted welfare, I could have had welfare. If I wanted Medicare, that's the the medicine stuff, I could have had all that. I don't believe in all that, so I didn't take any of that. I didn't need any of that. But what it meant was I didn't have the luxury to buy even a second trumpet for that matter, right? I didn't have the luxury to buy even a second trumpet. You hear these guys that are trumpet players, professional trumpet players, they've got 10 trumpets. I'm like, what kind of professional is that? Show me your income slips because I don't believe it. Chances are you've got a day job if you've got 10 trumpets. Right? So, but unless they're like, but anyway, so that's why that's why I've never hunted as an adult. That's why I don't do more stuff with guns and stuff like that, because I just never had. In fact, that gun I told you about, that's one of my adult students gave me that. And I can't wait to go back in. They in Texas. This week. This is the big news in Texas. This week they lifted the mask mandate. Woohoo! Now the stores can still require it within the store. But anyway, that's the good news here. And now I'm gonna get myself back in. I'm gonna take my student. He's the one that paid last time. I'm gonna pay this time, and I'm gonna treat him to a trip to the range. So that's great. You're welcome, James. James says thank you for everything. You're welcome. Yes, and I'm going to invite you guys, all of you, once more. If you want to send